Okay, so this is straight in. Like, this is like, boom. They just wrote the article on this yesterday, January 14, 2024. This is published by Fox News by Emma Colton at Fox News. FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. So basically dealing with individuals who have mental limitations. Now, the reason this has shock value, the reason this seems like, holy cow, is that essentially you would never want mentally unstable individuals who are severely impaired working with planes, right? Rockets? No. Planes? No. Heavy equipment? No. Medical treatment? No. Like stuff like that where there's potential of imminent danger to other people or lots of other people, like a flying bus in the air, which is essentially what a rocket is, which is essentially what a plane is, a jet is. You would not want severely mentally disabled individuals working in those fields. It's just like you could dismantle a country by having enough severely mentally disabled individuals working in those fields. So let's just go through this real quick. FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of federal workforce. And to be clear, let's just go through some of the details on here so that I can give you what they're saying, and then I can kind of give you my take on why there needs to be some corrections related to this. Okay. All right. The Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. So just to make things clear, diversity and inclusion, they're trying to rebalance the federal government so that there's less white people, there's more basically minorities, and essentially there's more vets working in it, and there's more people who are disabled working in it. So if you're a minority and you're disabled and you're a veteran, you're probably going to be working for the, for the federal government in some way, fashion, or form, because they're going to really reach out to try and get you. Okay, so that's the practical application version of it. Not good, not bad, just is what it is. Okay, targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric disabilities, and dwarfism. So just to be clear, like you could put a lot of disabilities into those particular general categories. A ton of disabilities would fit into that. Now, the initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which, of course, is a President Biden big push. If you go back to his website, you're going to see that diversity and inclusion is one of his main pushes, which, of course, speaks very heavily and widely to those individuals that are disabled who want to go ahead and work, and those individuals who are minorities who want to go ahead and get a job, and those individuals who basically have worked for the government before that want to continue their working with the government. Okay, so basically, diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel across our nation and beyond. The FAA's website shows the agency's guidelines on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd, 2022. Okay. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, I'm not even sure how to pronounce his last name because I've said it right before and I've said it wrong, but Department of Transportation is a government agency charged with regulating civil aviation and employs roughly 45,000 people. So just to keep in mind, the SSA has around 60 to 65,000 people, but should be operating at around 95,000 people, whereas the FAA has around 45,000 people. Here's the two people that we're talking about here, okay? All eyes have been on the FAA and airline industry in recent days after a plug door on a Boeing 737 MAX 9 blew out during an Alaska Airlines flight on January 5th. The FAA grounded all 737 MAX 9 planes after the incident and is carrying out extensive inspections and maintenance work. Cool. Now, the FAA added it would increase its oversight of Boeing in the wake of the incident, including auditing Boeing's 737 MAX 9 jetliner production line and companies that supply parts to that airline manufacturer. It goes on to talk about that incident, but the bottom line is just to give you where this whole thing gets, spicy. Here we go. Do you, and this is a quote specifically, so let's go through this real quick. Do you want to fly in an airplane where they prioritize DEI, that's your diversity and inclusion, hiring over your safety? Tech billionaire Elon Musk said on X last week. That is actually happening. And it is. It's true. That is not an inaccurate statement. It's not a false statement. It's a true statement. The DEI rot in the airline industry is way worse than you think, Daily Wire commentator Matt Walsh wrote in an op-ed last week. Critics of such commentary have pushed back on the argument that prioritizing DEI has made traveling less safe, with civil rights groups slamming Musk, for example, for the abhorrent and pathetic tweet. Now, here's the thing, just to make something clear. I've reached out to, in a FOIA request, but I've reached out to the SSA for details related to their diversity and inclusion, because ultimately what it does is they actually, in a report that they released, got rid of so many, basically white individuals that were working for them and increased so many of the non-white individuals working for them that they had created an imbalance, and they had advertised that as how they were such an amazing and diverse thing and company and agency. But the reality is that they created an agency that had become quasi-racist because they imbalanced it to achieve something that was not balanced, which is basically, we know how many individuals of each type of race are in America, and they significantly reduced the white population of how many people they would hire to hire specifically those who were non-white. So when they did that, and I reached out for, can you send me the manuals? What's going on? What's the training, etc. I got back a response saying, no, these are, documents that are, basically not being released to the general public. I still have that email. So the point is, this is a situation where diversity and inclusion is being used kind of like a weapon. And a lot of people, especially those on the white side, are looking at this going like, oh, what can we actually shoot for true diversity that works and helps? Or are we just going to shoot for a thing where we get rid of one type of individual, right? Which is the skin color that you might have. So that's what this serious situation is about. Plus the safety problem of the FAA hiring individuals who might not be able to, create reports at the level required when a plane goes down. Because let's consider a plane goes down. Oh, wait, Christy Hughes, thank you for the $5 donation. I always appreciate that. No worries, it's absolutely amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And guys, the donations that you basically send over, they do help me go ahead and get doggy treats and also gear as well, because one of the things that we're building here is kind of what the future of this is going to be, so I can give you more updates more often, which is going to be good. So what this comes down to, I'll just read through the thing. On the FAA's website, the agency states that people with severe mental and physical disabilities are the most unrepresented segment of the federal workforce. Now, in reality, we have to be careful, because one of the things that they talk about, and this is a direct quote from their website, people with severe mental and physical disabilities, severe mental impairments, severe mental limitations, at least by the standards of what the SSA is mostly going by now, is they're looking for people who have crisis-related treatment, where every 3 to potentially 5 or 6 months, they're in a sanatorium or they're in a behavioral facility for multiple nights because they can't control their emotions, they can't control their depression, anxiety, panic attacks, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, PTSD, mood disorders, bipolar, whatever. They can't control it. So putting individuals with true severe mental limitations at the, what the SSA is usually looking for levels is not a good idea. It's not, because those individuals are going to be hyper stressed by the requirements of the FAA, and those individuals who are essentially hyper stressed by the requirements of the FAA are going to be seeing an increase in basically those severe job that literally puts people in the air. So that's kind of the reality here. Because diversity, and here's a quote, is so critical, FAA actively supports and engages in a variety of associations, programs, coalitions, and initiatives to support and accommodate employees from diverse communities and backgrounds. Our people are our strength, and we take great care in investing in and valuing them as such, the FAA reads. Now, here's the thing. I don't think the FAA used the word severe properly. I think if the FAA had used the word moderate impairments, right? Mild, moderate disabling conditions, right? Because, with severe physical, you can get away with saying the actual word severe, because you might say, okay, that person had their leg amputated and half their hip, and that is severe, right? Under listing level criteria, under the 1.0s of the listings for the SSA. Who decides? The commissioner decides what the definition of disability is and what the definitions of the different levels of severe actually are. So like when you look at the federal government, that's the group for civilians and civilians interacting with different companies and things. That's the group that decides de facto whether or not somebody is severely impaired or not the VA, the SSA decides it. So at the end of the day, I think that severe mental, I think that's where the problem really comes into this for me, is that you can have severe physical limitations and still do a job at the FAA and do an amazing job and be one of the just top-notch employees there and do an amazing job and consistently do an amazing job. But if you have a severe mental impairment, It's not a place that you should be working unless it's a job that is constantly checked by some other group or some other manager. Because the problem is, if you have a memory problem, or you have a difficult time interacting with other people, or you have a thing where you feel threatened, about doing a particular thing, and therefore you just don't do it, or you basically hold yourself back from doing it, you're not doing what should be done in order to keep people flying through the air safe. And that is a big problem. So I would say this is okay for diversity purposes, for the sense of severity, so long as for physical, you could say mild, moderate, severe, not extreme, mild, moderate, severe for the physical, but for the mental, mild and moderate. I do not see severe mental impairments being acceptable for working for the FAA unless that's a position where they're constantly being managed, constantly being watched, and essentially they have a system in place to review the work that's being completed. So that's one of those big things that to me, that's where the line should be. Next one, when asked for comment on the initiative, including what roles people with disabilities would fulfill, the FAA told Fox News Digital that the agency thoroughly seeks and vets qualified candidates from as many sources as possible for a range of positions. The FAA employs tens of thousands of people for a wide range of positions, from administrative roles to oversight and execution of critical safety functions. Like many large employers, the agency proactively seeks qualified candidates from as many sources as possible, all of whom must meet rigorous qualifications that, of course, will vary by position, the FAA said. And so there's the trick. There's the flip that a lot of people, when they see the headline, don't realize, which is that the FAA is not going to hire you unless you pass a test. But that test, let's say you have a disabled person who's mentally having a good day, they could pass the test and still, if they're severely mentally impaired, right, cause a big ripple effect, a problem down the line. And then what do you do with the lawsuit? What do you do with the situation? Okay, so let's say somebody has extreme, anxiety, and as a result, they build up this pressure. Then they get a headache. They forget to do stuff. Let's say somebody forgets to report something or do something correctly. A lawsuit results. What do you say? The employee was severely mentally impaired. Well, then the question becomes, in a court of law, why was that person doing that job? So that's the trick. You can do this, but you have to have that person basically moderated by some other individual who checks the work of it. Cameraman, thank you for the $2 donation. Absolutely love it. Let's see, Walter, is it true that they would allow blind pilots? No, they're not allowing blind pilots. They're not. I know, I saw that stuff too. No, they would not allow blind pilots. I mean, look, there's extreme examples of this. Like, would you allow somebody who is suicidal to basically fly planes? Would you allow somebody that's suicidal to sit in a tower and tell planes where they should be when they're flying in? Would you allow somebody that's homicidal, right, severe mental impairment, to go ahead and run essentially the taxiway procedures, as to which plane should go and then the next plane, etc.? Should you allow somebody who has severe bipolar, to go ahead and interact with pilots that are flying through the air? No, obviously not. You cannot do that. You can't have somebody in the tower screaming at pilots that are just trying to get from point A to point B, get the jet down and get paid. So no, you can't do that. But that's the thing. There are a lot of positions within the FAA where you could have individuals with mild or moderate mental impairments to go ahead and do those functions, and it would work totally fine. It would work totally fine. Okay. And you notice the FAA always gives, along with these other agencies, a total BS, bullshitty response of like, we do this and we do that. And it's, but if we read through this again, I'm going to pull it out as an attorney to show you guys the logic analysis behind this. The FAA employs tens of thousands of people for a wide range of positions. So they're setting the stage to say that not only is the FAA just tower people, sometimes it's just administrative people, sometimes it's people just literally picking up food or doing this or whatever. Okay. So they're setting it up to say, yeah, we have positions for this that are extremely high stress, but we also have positions over here that are basically super low level, no worry kind of jobs. Okay. From administrative roles to oversight and execution of critical safety functions. Like many large employers, the agency proactively seeks qualified candidates from as many sources as possible. I'm just going to tell you a little secret. Okay. A lot of the pilots that come out of the Air Force are basically, vetted, schmoozied, are, looked at heavily to go ahead and integrate into the FAA. But a lot of them go ahead and get, taken by Airbus, Boeing, places like that. If you're ever wondering where a lot of those Air Force people end up when they get out, it's either going to be basically the FAA or one of these major, flight facilities, whether it's a simulator, actually creating airplanes, or building the jets themselves. Okay. Next thing, the agency proactively seeks qualified candidates from as many sources as possible. That's their diversity statement when it comes to searching for people. We look on this website, we look on that website, and we look at this website, the one where we make people go ahead and apply. That's basically, from as many as possible. But realistically, their sources they're looking at people who are in the military field or people who are in the aviation field to go ahead and join. Because, look, aviation is like disability law. It's super niche. If you're part of it, you know certain phrases, you know certain words, you know good things, bad things, stuff like that. If you're not part of it, you just got to learn all that stuff. Somebody's going to take you by the hand and walk you through it. All of whom must meet rigorous qualifications. And there's the statement they want you to hear. All of whom must meet rigorous qualifications that, of course, will vary by position. The FAA said. So what do they mean by this rigorous qualifications? Yes, some of the jobs require certification. Some of the jobs require higher levels of education completion. So what they're saying is if somebody is truly severely mentally impaired, they won't make it through the education requirements. They won't make it through the hiring process. They won't make it through the certification process to end up in that position. Okay. And then, of course, those rigorous qualifications that, of course, will vary by position, which is they're getting them out of this whole wiggle statement of well, we're going to put a blind pilot in. There are obviously no blind pilots. This is purely going to be they have to pass all of these federal requirements in order to be able to do these jobs. Dr. Stanley Goldfarb, chair of Do No Harm, a group of healthcare professionals, medical students, and policymakers working to protect healthcare from a radical, divisive, and discriminatory ideology, told Fox News Digital that similar to the medical field, the aviation industry has an obligation to protect its travelers, which is very true. Legal industry has it. We take an oath. Medical industry has it. They take an oath. Aviation industry has it. They take an oath, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Next thing right here. So basically, I hire for diversity. Biden Joint Chiefs Chairman nominee placed DEI at forefront of Air Force leaders. The aviation industry has responsibility for traveler safety, just as the healthcare industry has responsibility for patient safety. These responsibilities outweigh other factors when considering applicants to work in those fields. People with disabilities who can successfully complete the task should never face discrimination, which is very true, said Goldfarb, a retired professor and the former associate dean for curriculum at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, which is very accurate, very accurate. Now, with that said, okay, these are targeted disabilities that these particular groups are looking for. These are targeted disabilities with certain severity levels that they're trying to go ahead and obtain. Where they screwed up, where the FAA messed up, where they put stuff on their website that they shouldn't, is when they said severe mental impairments. Because if somebody is severely mentally unstable, it just won't work. It won't work. It won't work. It's just, they're going to be in mental facilities. They're going to be, constantly on medications that change and alter their ability to interact with others, ability to interact with just themselves when it's completing a basic task. It's just not going to work. Okay. It's just not going to work. So unfortunately, Goldfarb said identity politics is creating opportunities for so-called oppressed groups by lowering standards for entry into those fields and thereby endangering the safety of those which it's designed to serve. Some endeavors simply do not lend themselves to identity politics, which is where he's making a great point of where do we make the cutoff for people that have really bad medication side effects? Maybe they're good that day when they take the test, but they're not good thereafter. Where do we make the cutoff for somebody being so physically disabled that they're not able to function and they realistically should be in the hospital overnight at least once a month? Where do we make the cutoff? So I wanted to ask you guys what your thoughts were relating to this. Charlton Zimmerman, Goldfarb. Yes, that is the name. I said it. It sounds, I assume, yeah, it's right here. Look, it's Goldfarb. I didn't make up the name. I know it's a weird last name, but I didn't make it up. It's right there. It's right there, Charlton. It's right there. All right. So anyways, point is, I want to know your thoughts because my thoughts are this. You can have disabled people work for the FAA. You can have disabled mild physical, moderate physical, severe physical, but you cannot have disabled extreme physical. Okay. They won't be able to function. They won't be able to do the job properly. And at the severe, you still run into the issue of what kind of pain meds are they actually taking? What are the symptoms? What are the signs? What are the side effects of what's going on there? Right. You get into, using the word severe is not always a good idea here. Mild, I say, mild mental limitations. Moderate mental limitations, severe mental limitations, no, off. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you have somebody with severe mental limitations when it comes to anxiety, depression, panic attacks, suicidal, homicidal, things like that, they should not be working for the FAA. It's just too important. It's like sending a rocket up into space, except instead of that, you're sending it up into the air and flying it from point A to point B. You are putting hundreds of thousands of people's lives in the hands of individuals that could potentially cause havoc. Now, it's not as severe as it would be, example, for space, right? So if you're sending a rocket ship and you have a disabled person with mental impairments and their medication causes them to have difficulty doing the math, or they forget to do something as a result of the medication, or their impairment causes memory loss or whatever. So sometimes they're okay, and then sometimes it's just not there. That's a problem, because when you do rocket stuff, all of a sudden when you've miscalculated slightly, you end up with a lot of money lost, right? Billions of dollars lost, and dead cosmonauts / astronauts / whatever you would call these different individuals that go into space, right? I'm trying to think of another one, but astronauts and cosmonauts are the most common. So the point is, as a result of all of that situation, I think that I think what the website should have gone through is talked about the positions that would be best suited for that particular type of situation. They could even go into types of limitations with the medication that's being used, because what happened here is you had basically, okay, and I'll read the next thing because then it will open up a whole extra can of worms. The FAA's website outlines that some managers can hire disabled people and veterans through an on-the-spot hiring process, providing required documentation, provided required documentation submitted. They put it wrong as providing. The FAA also notes that employees with disabilities will be provided reasonable accommodation on the job. Reasonable accommodation at the FAA ensures that employees with disabilities have access to accommodations that suit their needs. This can include modifications made to existing facilities or special equipment, according to the website. So here's the thing, okay? The FAA wants certain employees, even if they're disabled, right? Even if they're disabled, they want the Air Force people. They want some of the Navy people. They want them. So they're going to make it work. They're going to make it work to get that person to do that job, because let's just be fair too. When it comes to aviation, not everybody can do every job in aviation. If you have a high school dropout because they have anxiety, depression, panic attacks, whatever, learning disability, etc., they can't go and become a pilot, right? If somebody has a 6th grade education and they were able to get past that, they can't go and become a pilot. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to work. Just like not every person can become an astronaut. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. It's a very small group of people. A very small group of aviation experts can become astronauts. That's just the reality of what it is. That's just, remember, it's tiered, right? You get at the very bottom, if you look at the medical industry, you have people that hang out at a hospital. Then you get to people that are like, just working in basic administrative for medical, and then we get to like nurses, advanced registered nurse practitioners. Then we get to physicians, then we get to specialists, and then double board certified specialists. It's all tiered so that people with different abilities can achieve different levels. Now, let's be honest here. Their website could have done a better job clearing up and making it so that people understood exactly what impairments, what disabled individuals are capable of applying and doing this and that and yada, yada. But then you get into a situation where they're trying to narrow the scope, and they might get sued because they might say something, and then somebody might take offense to it and hire an attorney to go ahead and sue the FAA. So in these situations, what happens is this. You have a pro White House for diversity inclusion, which in my opinion has gone a little bit too extreme when it comes to the race thing, but that's a whole different video. And they want to go ahead and push for diversity in the sense of disabled individuals. Very good, because a lot of people don't want to hire disabled people because of some limitation, because they think they're not going to be as fast as somebody else doing the job. Some instances that's true, some instances it's not. And that little bit of extra duty to figure that out is a cost some employers just do not want to, they don't want to make that, right? They don't want to have to expend for that cost. And so what you'll see in especially the private industry, you'll see people like, can I get a job here? Can I get a job there? And they won't give you a job if you have a disability. Like if you have a cane, they're not going to want to give you the job. Just go ask around with your friends and family that have canes. Do most employers want to hire an individual with a cane? Absolutely not. What about if they have a walker with a seat? Absolutely not. What if they're in a wheelchair? Absolutely not. Well, we want the federal government to be able to step in and say, hey, we want to hire this individual. They're in a wheelchair, but they can still click and do data entry. They can still communicate with other people. All we have to do is get a special desk, set them up the computer. We can make it happen. We want that. But when we get to, truly severe individuals in the mental landscape, you have to be careful. And the reason why is you never know to what degree that impairment is going to change over time. They could get better. Work could give them purpose. They could feel amazing. They could go in a very positive direction. But at the same time, they could get worse. And when that happens, it's tough because it's like you have this person that knows the gig. They know how to work it. They know what to do, but they can't do it at the level they need to do it to keep up with somebody who doesn't have an impairment. So those are the arguments. That's my thinking. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys got a chance to go ahead and think about this with me. I want to know your specific thoughts. I see Diana Fernandez with the sweetie photos. That's awesome. I want to know your specific thoughts on where you think the lines should be or what things should be integrated into the website of the FAA to clarify specifically what they're, accepting. Because, when the Republicans attacked this, right? They saw this, they're like, whoa, we can't have blind pilots and stuff like that. And I get it. I understand it. But realistically, it's not that simple. A blind individual is never going to pass the pilot program in the first place. They're never going to be able to, log all of those hours in a Cessna flying around doing touch and goes over and over and over and over again. They're never going to be able to do that. So the Republicans kind of took an advantage point on this one. And they were saying, whoa, look at how this diversity and inclusion is ruining everything. It's not accurate. It's not true. It's not right. But there are other points in here that we should be thinking about as to what restrictions should exist and how do we help those who don't fall within those restrictions to get a job. I'm a big fan of disabled people working, even if it's just a part-time thing, an hour a week, whatever, because work gives people purpose. And frankly, when disabled people become like 100% disabled, they never interact with anybody. They just sit in a room. It's not good. They give up all their friends. They give up their future in the sense of being something other than who they are. And they want to, it's a problem. For me, it's a problem. We don't have a vocational environment that allows the disabled to find a better work position job. Like the VA will work with you. They'll set you up in programs. They'll let you go work at a place. They'll pay the place. Like they'll work it. But the SSA doesn't have any of that. They have the Ticket to Work program, right? Which is basically where they'll like work with you to go find a job. But it's not like the VA where it's much more, incorporated to go ahead and assist you and try this out and do this and that and this and that. The SSA is much more about like, okay, well, we'll set you up with this job and they have to pay you. But the problem with that is that, to be fair, a lot of the people who are putting job opportunities out there for the disabled, they're not jobs that the disabled want to actually work. They're just not. How many of you, right? Just hit me with this one. How many of you want to go and work for, let's say, a used clothing store that donates a portion of, that gets donations of clothing, and you have to go ahead and separate the clothing, put it out, clean it up, whatever. How many of you want to do that? That's a major one. That's a major one in the Ticket to Work program. So my point is, the SSA is like just on the cusp of doing it right, but they need to get a much larger group of potential employers that would look and work with those who are disabled. But again, the problem they run into is that the economy is so poor right now that most employers are not thinking about like, how do I hire more disabled people? That ain't even in the private market. That's not on the tongue of these major employers. I mean, you can find a website where they're trying to show it and make it look good, but that's not on the top right now because, the economy is so bad. These mega employers are saying to themselves, how do I get the most out of that human being that I'm paying this much per hour, right? Their whole thing is, how do I push this person to produce? It's not, how do I get a disabled person to work this and enjoy the job? It's not that. Right now, it's, how do I get 20 pounds out of that 10-pound bag? That's exactly what it is. So anyways, guys, I will catch you a little bit later. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. Happy Martin Luther King Day. I will catch you a little bit later. Please remember to go ahead and take care of yourself. It's a 2024 election year. Just be safe. Take care of yourself. Okay. I will catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful night, and we will go from there. Thanks so much, everybody. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.